Welcome into the Bear Squad Show. I'm Joe George, post-game host. Ian Cunningham has left the Bears, and there's no pick compensation coming back. We'll get to that on today's show.
I'm Adam Sager. We'll also answer what are the Bears' biggest draft needs heading into this 2026 NFL draft.
And I'm Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears. One of them might be left tackle, but it's hard to tell given Ozzie Trapillo's injury and the uncertainty that brings.
Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Bear Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube and audio channels. Joe George, Adam Sager, and Lauren Cox here with you for the next hour. We'll be here with you on Tuesdays and Fridays throughout the offseason. Today we'll discuss Ian Cunningham's departure from the Bears, what that means. We'll talk about the draft pick compensation that's not coming the Bears' way. We'll start to take a look at the NFL draft and what the Bears' biggest needs are. Big question at left tackle all of a sudden after the injury in the postseason. And we'll do our first look at a couple of the mock draft 1.0s that have come out from some of the top guys in the industry. But Lauren, I'll start with you. On Tuesday, we were discussing, as we were on doing the show, we found out that Ian Cunningham was doing a second interview with the Atlanta Falcons, both him and James Lipfert from the Houston Texans. And it ends up being Ian Cunningham. He is leaving for the Falcons to be the GM, but not be the guy that's in full control. That's Matt Ryan. I feel like you were surprised by this move because he doesn't have full power.
Yeah, totally. I have to imagine somewhere in that interviewing process, they said the right words to assure him that you get to have some amount of control over this team that maybe is more lip service than reality in terms of Matt Ryan still being his boss and still making those decisions. But I imagine that had to be an obstacle that they worked through in terms of him feeling like he gets to be a real big boy general manager, just like all the other teams' general managers, even though he does have Matt Ryan, over his shoulder, kind of looking down on it. But I understand him, wanting to stretch his legs and spread his wings and get into a new organization that can be a little bit more his, as opposed to very clearly being Ryan Poles' literal right-hand man with a different title. So I guess it's to step up, emotionally and mentally, even if it doesn't necessarily feel like a step up from a responsibility standpoint.
Yeah, I just look at this as it's such a weird situation, and you never know, what he's being told behind the scenes. And Matt Ryan did come out in his introductory press conference and say, the GM is going to be the GM. He's going to be, now, yes, Matt Ryan has final say on everything, but of course, everything he was saying in that press conference was he's going to let his guys do the job. If that's Kevin Stefanski as the head coach, and that's now Ian Cunningham is the GM, they will have the power to make their moves that they see necessary for this roster. Now, when that comes to the pick compensation, that doesn't matter. It's still the fact that Matt Ryan's number one in that organization is the president of football ops, and then Ian Cunningham's number two, and that's why no pick compensation is coming back for the Chicago Bears.
I know a lot of people are really upset about the pick compensation, and I find it annoying, honestly. And I don't know how you guys feel. My gut kind of tells me this is going to be a precedent changer. Actually, I think for the pick compensation, because I know the picks don't come from the Falcons, but this kind of feels like a workaround in a way to not reward other teams, is to put someone that's in charge, has the final say, as you said, Adam, say on the press conference that though this GM's going to have a real say in everything we do, obviously, and then but on the pieces of paper that the documents that are signed, he doesn't have final say. It's Matt Ryan. I get why people are annoyed, Lauren, but there's nothing the Bears can do about it at this point. And even if it does change, it's not like they're gonna in a year or two go back and be like, hey, Chicago, here's those third round picks that you're supposed to get in 26 that you're gonna now get in 2028.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering that if Ian Cunningham were a white guy, this wouldn't be a conversation, right? I mean, this is not about the brain drain necessarily of hiring away your top guy that this is supposed to protect you from. I mean, it's about promoting minority candidates in the NFL. So it's not like the Bears are owed some draft picks just because Ian Cunningham happens to be a person of color. It's supposed to be a bonus thing, not necessarily like a strategy of like, oh, you got to promote specific people to get those draft picks. So like it feels like the kind of thing that, yeah, sure, it would be really nice, but it was always supposed to be kind of an extra thing that you weren't specifically counting on. Just like the same thing is true with coaches, right? If you had a coordinator that was going to be hired, like Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles are hiring the best people for the job. They're not just picking guys based on whether or not we think we could get a couple of draft picks if they get hired away. So it's one of those things that I think is a bigger, it feels worse when you get really kind of caught up in it. You take a step back and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like this was never a thing 10 years ago. So why do we feel like we're getting robbed of something it's a relatively new thing that ultimately is kind of a, it's a small thing in the grand scheme of NFL movement.
Yeah. And the weird thing to me is like the writing per this rule, per this thing. It's, Matt Ryan gets this job. He has zero experience running an NFL team, running an NFL organization. Yet because he is, one of the best players in Atlanta Falcons history, he gets this opportunity to become the president of football operations. And now a guy like Ian Cunningham, who has all this experience, was with the Eagles, came to the Bears, helped the Bears turn this around pretty quickly with Ryan Poles. He does get his own opportunity. He goes there as the guy with the most experience in this thing. And the NFL is like, well, no. He technically doesn't have the power. So Bears, you don't get the pick. So I get why people are annoyed, but I 100% get what Lauren was just saying. So it's just one of those situations that in the end, it sucks for the Bears, but it's great for Ian Cunningham. And you got to be happy for him as he gets his chance to hopefully run his own team, make his own decisions with the Atlanta Falcons. But yeah, in the end, those third round picks would have been nice, one this year, one next year for the Chicago Bears as they try to, as now the cap space starts to tighten. Those extra picks can help you by going and getting another edge rusher, or maybe you draft double safeties because you have third rounds and you're like, okay, maybe these guys can both start for us. There's all things you can do with an extra third round pick. And it's just the situation that sucks. And the NFL choosing to word it this way has, screwed over the Bears. We'd be laughing if it was the Packers. We'd be laughing if it was the Lions or the Vikings, but it happens to the Bears, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the point you said is the most important that I think Bears fans are overlooking is it's awesome for Ian Cunningham.
Yeah.
Like, I think at the end of the day, like, my gut kind of tells me, like, unless Matt Ryan really loves Michael Penix, Ian Cunningham's going to have kind of whatever say he wants in this organization. Like, and my guess is they're on the same page about Michael Penix. We already know that before Ian was even hired, that Kirk Cousins was being released. So, like, they've already kind of got a plan in motion for what it's going to be. It's interesting, I guess, from like a Lauren, from a non-Bears perspective, from a, I guess from a playoff perspective, maybe down the road, like, now that Cunningham's in place, Stefanski's in place, like, how do you now view the Falcons, like, with the talent they have on their roster and this group they've formed in their front office and coaching staff, as like a team in the NFC going forward?
Well, quarterback is still such a big question mark there. And that's another team that, like, yeah, they kind of leveraged their future a little bit to trade up for another first round pick this past draft. So they don't have a lot of draft capital this season. Like, and to sort of bring this back to the Bears and Ian Cunningham for a second, like, it just surprises me that, like, this was the job he jumped for, right? Like, I understand there's only 32 GM opportunities, and if one becomes available to you, you take it. But it just seems like, for a guy who seemed to be a little bit picky or just like intentional about where he's interviewing and what jobs he might actually go after, like, I'm surprised like this type of role was the first one he jumped to, just because, like, this was an offseason where there were only 2 general manager openings, period, and the Dolphins filled theirs very quickly after they fired their guy in season. So, like, I just thought he might wait and wait for what might feel more like the quote unquote perfect opportunity, as opposed to, like, and maybe he sees, well, Ryan Poles and Matt Ryan are buddies, so I just get to kind of plug in, and that's the perfect opportunity in his eyes, that there's a synergy there that he can get along with those people. But it didn't feel like, wow, what a dream opportunity for Ian Cunningham to walk into a great situation. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure from ownership to get things done, and Arthur Blank, I think, feels like he's been meddling a little bit more in recent years as he's gotten older, and I felt a little bit of that mortality of, like, all right, we got to get something done here. And also, Ian Cunningham doesn't get to pick his head coach. Like, it just feels weird that he kind of just plugs into this existing machine, as opposed to, like, handing him the keys of the car, and he gets to make the real impactful decisions.
Adam?
Yeah, I look at this team and like Lauren said, it's all about the quarterback position. I mean, they've got arguably the best running back in football in Bijan Robinson. You got Drake London. Do they retain Kyle Pitts? We'll see. I think they do in the end. They got some weapons. They got Pierce and Jalen Walker last year in the first round. They have AJ Terrell. They have some good players on this team. They have an offensive line that's decent. So there's pieces there to build off of. But as you said, Lauren, they gave up their first round pick this year to jump in and get that second edge rusher last year. So now they don't have that. They only have 5 picks in this draft. So I think the best thing about the Falcons is the division they play in, because the Bucs, I don't think, are getting any better. The Carolina Panthers are okay. I mean, we saw them, fight for that playoff spot, but still they were a 500 ball club in the end, really. And then you have the New Orleans Saints, who were one of the worst teams in football. Now, yes, they're getting better, but it's all about that division for me when I look at the Falcons, that if Penix takes a jump or under Stefanski, or they go get a different quarterback and, he plays well under Stefanski, they definitely have a chance to make the playoffs. But overall, the roster's still missing key pieces, including the quarterback position.
I think the thing I'm finding myself stuck on here is, like, especially for the general manager role, you don't really see guys get second chances at that. It's pretty rare that the general manager gets 2 teams. So you get one shot at this to pick a team and be that general manager. And, like, is Atlanta right now the team you go to and say, I'm going to build a Super Bowl contender? I've got a clear path towards building a Super Bowl contender here. It's like, well, maybe you got to get a new quarterback, but probably not this year. So then they don't have a real shot at one. So then 2026 is a little bit of a wash in that regard. And then you're trying for one in 2027, but then you've already kind of leveraged some of these draft picks and stuff. So then it just seems strange that it's like, all right, this is the one specifically that he's been waiting for and he's jumping to. To me, it's got to be all about then that relationship with Matt Ryan, that, like, that's the thing that puts everything else over the top, because otherwise all the other big decisions have been made for him there.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's interesting for the Bears now is just obviously how they fill that role. Like, do they go internal, external? This is always that time of the year where I feel like it's such an unknown. Like, I feel like back when Ian Cunningham was probably hired, there was we don't know general managers, assistant GMs, and scouts. Obviously, like, we know coaches and players and things like that. So I think it's just a question of just, like, how quickly do you replace them? Do you go internal? Do you go external? But Lauren, like, do you feel like this is like a huge, like, loss for the Bears, or it's like, well, Ryan Poles is still here, and he's kind of got good faith, and he hired Ian Cunningham, and he drafted well last year. He's hits on his top picks. Like, I don't feel like this is a major concern. I feel like you can find someone else to work with Ryan Poles and just kind of keep chugging along at this point.
Yeah, I'm curious, because Ryan Poles has talked so much about how, like, when he's got a tough decision, he's always bouncing it off of Ian Cunningham, and that's always viewed as, like, a good thing, that he's an open-minded person who is willing to take other people's perspectives and not just assume he knows best. But, like, when you take away that sounding board, that buffer, and that filter, I mean, I'm sure he will replace that with someone else and try and do something similar. I just wonder if you lose, like, or how much you lose there in terms of, like, like, what has Ian Cunningham stopped Ryan Poles from doing, or what has Ian Cunningham pushed Ryan Poles to do that he might not have otherwise done? And not to say that, like, Cunningham was, like, somehow, the secret mastermind behind any of the good moves the Bears made, but we just don't know, right? Like, how much of an influence that was. Like, was this always, how much of a yes man was Ian Cunningham? Was he just kind of agreeing with Ryan Poles and maybe pushing him towards some bad decisions as a result? I think it'll be interesting to see, like, how his track record changes, if at all. Like, if he starts swinging and missing more, or swinging and missing less, and whether or not we can attribute some of that to having another experienced person that, again, kind of came up from a different organization, because a lot of the rest of the guys Ryan Poles has brought in were kind of Chiefs guys that he had some connections to. But Cunningham, I'm sure that there were some connections, but being in the Eagles organization, got some of that Howie Roseman, like, whatever magic they have over in Philadelphia, that you just feel like was kind of a different perspective, that otherwise you get a lot of guys that are just Brett Veach underlings, that you're trying to recreate the same kind of idea here.
Yeah, I mean, we know one thing that Ian Cunningham did for Ryan Poles, and that was keep him from trading up for Rome Odunze. If you remember that video, he was in the draft room, and you could tell Ryan Poles was itching to call and make a trade to get up to 7 even maybe 6, and get Rome Odunze. And Cunningham, was there just like, no, just hold. And it worked out where the Bears didn't have to give up anything and still get their guy in Rome Odunze. So he's definitely helped them in different ways. I think he was part of bringing DeAndre Swift in, obviously, who was a former Eagle. I think that, he's done some good things. But, there's other guys in this organization. Jeff King is the name that instantly pops up as the player personnel director. So I think he could be the guy that just steps right into that role and becomes the next man up. Or maybe there's somebody with the Chiefs or somebody that Ryan Poles knows out there that he feels a little more comfortable with, and he goes and gets him. But, yeah, I think it'll hurt losing Ian Cunningham, but to what extent, I don't know. I think we might just see a little bit more of an aggressive Ryan Poles than we've even seen in the past. And we've seen some aggressiveness with the Torrey Taylor and, other picks like that. So this draft is going to be an interesting one for Ryan Poles and company.
Yeah, Jeff King is an interesting name, too, because he's someone that they inherited from Ryan Pace, that he kind of came up as a scout in the Bears organization. So I like the idea of, like, this isn't just Ryan Poles' best friend that he's been working with for 30 years for 20 years in the NFL, but like someone who can come in and not just agree and be in the same like mental focus and same perspective of having gone through all the same experiences together. Like, he'll have a different perspective that he can, if he gets the job, can hopefully apply and be that buffer that Ian Cunningham also provided.
All right, we got a lot of draft questions as draft season is right around the corner. We got the Senior Bowl going on right now, wrapping up this weekend. Before you know it, the Combine will be here. And really, before you know it, it'll be April. And the Bears will be on the clock, potentially with the 25th pick in the NFL draft. We'll start to take a look at that next as we start to get into our offseason draft talk next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every single deduction. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life by visiting turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, guys, so let's start to look at the draft here. And we'll start with the left tackle conversation because I think it's the biggest wrinkle to this offseason is the injury to Ozzie there at the end. Braxton Jones, free agent. Theo Benedict, a restricted free agent. So got a giant question mark here. And I don't know how you guys feel. I kind of feel like we're back at square one and talking about the draft and free agency. Like, I really feel like things haven't changed particularly much from last offseason, like left tackle, pass rush. Now you add in safety to the mix of like how you look at it. But like, it feels like we're kind of starting the same song and dance all over again because some of the moves they made last year that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham made didn't really work out for your defense. And then this left tackle injury adds that wrinkle. So, Lauren, where are you at with the left tackle position for the Bears? Because it does feel like it's a need to some extent. I forgot to mention Kieran. Like, I guess he could still be a thing for the Bears. But where are you at, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm so torn on this because I think it's worth stating, like, if Ozzie Trapillo hadn't gotten injured, I don't know that we'd be having nearly the same conversation. We could talk about depth and competition there. Like, you bring in another veteran to kind of push him and Theo Benedict, but like that with a torn patellar, like this late in the process, like it's, training camp at the absolute earliest, but really I think, week one and everything is in doubt. And it's the kind of thing where even if somehow he was healthy enough to play week one, he would have missed all of OTAs and training camp so like he's not going to be he's not going to have that opportunity to get better this offseason. Like the offseason is such a time where you focus on the minutia of technique and you kind of the fundamentals from the ground back up, that's really where a lot of guys get better, because in the season you're game planning, you're scheming, and it's more about how you beat the next opponent than how you specifically get better as a player. So it's going to put even Trapillo's development behind. Like, I still feel like it would feel not quite redundant, but like to use a high draft pick on a left tackle specifically is like it feels like 12 months from now, Ozzy Trapillo can still be your left tackle of the future. So then, can you do like a 1-year veteran contract, like for an older free agent that is you just kind of plug and play as a temporary fill the hole, knowing that Trapillo is more likely going to be your long-term guy? Like it's going to depend on price there, but I don't like the idea of having to use another premium draft pick on a tackle, and then you're left with a good problem of having 3 good tackles, but then it's a premium draft pick that you got other spots that it would be nice to be able to use that towards, as opposed to a spot that you've already put significant draft capital in and have young players that you like, even if one of them just not available to you temporarily.
Yeah, I think when you look at this, I wouldn't expect anything on the field in game situations for Trapillo, at least until the middle of the season. So that's where my mind goes, that you need somebody. Maybe it's just offering Braxton Jones a 1-year deal to come back. He's familiar with the situation there now. And let's be real, with the other 4 guys healthy, this Bears offensive line was one of the best in the NFL, despite playing a rookie, undrafted free agent, and a banged up Braxton Jones. And they were still really, really good this season. So I'm with Lauren. I'm not spending the first overall or the number 25 pick on, Caden Proctor from Alabama or anything like that. I want, a veteran, like Lauren said, and I just look at Braxton Jones as a guy that knows the system. He's been there a year. They know what they're getting. So if they bring him back, they trust him for a year. Now you still got to have somebody behind him, because we know Braxton Jones gets hurt and offensive linemen get hurt all the time. So is Theo Benedict that guy? Or is it, okay, Braxton Jones goes down. Now you're looking at, let's move Joe Tooney outside and put Theo Benedict inside if you're more comfortable with that. There's different options here, but I definitely think you need to bring in somebody that you feel like can be your left tackle, at least for the first half of the season. And then maybe Trapillo works his way back in.
Adam, can I throw something back at you in this left tackle in the draft conversation? I think there's this tricky, like, sweet spot of like, okay, I'm with you. Don't want to use an early draft pick on a left tackle because it's just like it's a lot to invest back in that position. But then if you just but a late round pick at left tackle isn't going to be someone you necessarily trust to come in and start as a rookie. So like, is there a Goldilocks? Like, well, a 3rd round pick is, for example, is not too early, but also not too late? Or is it like, well, another 3rd round pick is just another Karan Amagaji? So like, I wonder, is there even a draft pick that would make sense for a potential starting left tackle, as opposed to like, sure, you could draft one late as a backup, but like in the draft, even be a source of replacement this year?
What's funny? What would really help this is an extra 3rd round pick that they don't get from Ian Cunningham.
Just take a flyer.
Yeah. But for me, when I look at it, just like you said, I think it's just smarter. You invested in Ozzy Trapillo, and I know this injury is a tough one to come back from with the patellar tendon tear, but I think it's something that if you trust that he can come back, you're not spending a big-time draft capital on it. Maybe if there's a guy in the 4th or 5th you like as depth, go ahead and draft him. But for me this year, I think the first few rounds need to be about defense, obviously pass rush, run stuffing defensive tackle, and then maybe another weapon, depending on what you do with DJ Moore or DeAndre Swift in one of those situations. So I look at the first 3-4 picks. I want 3 defenders and then maybe a weapon, another weapon for Caleb Williams, because like I said, this offensive line was really, really good last year, despite the inefficiencies of the left tackle spot. So if you trust that Trapillo is going to come back, just go get me a Braxton Jones, somebody that's played left tackle, and it's just a 1-year deal. And I think it could be good for Braxton Jones too. Come back fully healthy, go a year. He's only 27 years old. If they know, okay, you're probably going to go into free agency again next year. If he has a good year, now he's going to go out and get some decent money. Whereas this year, he's probably signing a 1-year prove-it deal wherever he ends up.
And can I throw this?
Go ahead.
Well, like, Ozzy Trapillo started, I think, 7 games when you count the playoff game this season. Like, is that enough to say, yep, he's our guy, no questions asked, he's the long-term future at left tackle? Or do you think the Bears look at this and say, hey, like, definitely don't want to give up on him, but like, he could turn out to still be a bust. I mean, you just don't know after one season, not even half of a season of starts that we actually saw him. I don't know if there was a lot to be discouraged about, but it's a small sample size to say, nope, you got your franchise left tackle. We just got to wait for him to get healthy and he's good to go. Like, could they look at this and say, no, they do need some real legitimate long-term competition in case he doesn't work out and he's more of a swing tackle in his career?
Yeah, see, I think that's where like it would be interesting, like if like Caden Proctor from Alabama was available at 25, and if Ryan Poles pulled that trigger, I think it would just tell you more about what they do view of Ozzie. Like I think it's a great point, Lauren. Like if they're not 100% sold, I think left tackle is on the table in the first round, and that's their evaluation of him and like what that means. But like I don't think we can totally rule it out that they don't go into this offseason and be like, hey, we have to invest in left tackle. We're not totally sold. You know, maybe I don't think there's an idea that he could be a guard or anything like that, but like, you know, swing tackle, guard, like what's the flexibility of Ozzie? Like maybe there's something more there. But yeah, I think it does have to be at least like pondered, like to see, like until we see, like hear Ryan Poles say definitively, like, nope, this is our left tackle. When he's healthy, we're good. Or maybe when the first or second round ends and they don't take one, I think then we'll know our answer for sure. But I think it's on the table. And Adam, I want to go back to something you mentioned. You mentioned Joe Thuney, left tackle. Is there any consideration that if Ozzie's coming back and like if they project in like week 4, week 5, that the solution is that Joe Thuney is just your tackle in week 1 and you put someone else at guard, and then when Ozzie is healthy, you go back to the line that you originally planned, Lauren? Like, would you be open to that at all if it's a short-term solution, not a long-term solution?
Sorry, I think you started directing that to Adam, and then you said my name.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Lauren, you can go ahead.
Okay. I think it depends 100% on like what the actual prognosis for Ozzie Trapilo is, right? Like, is that a firm week 4, or it's a maybe week 4 in an optimistic best case scenario? But like, if there's still a chance it's week 8 or week 12 or whatever before he gets back out there, I don't like the idea of like well, we'll just patch it over with the guys we already got on the roster. Like it's too important to have a good offensive line in front of Caleb Williams and for this running game. And like that's a position and a group that this organization has too often just kind of, we'll just patch it together with this or that, as opposed to like, they finally made it a priority last offseason to go trade for guys, sign free agents, use a draft pick, like boom, boom, boom. They were putting investment in the offensive line and making this a priority. So it would feel like going backwards to say, oh, well, now we'll just have Theo Benedict and Karana Magaji compete for it, or we'll plug Joe Thuney over there temporarily and put Jordan McFadden in at left guard and say that's good enough. Like we all got tired of the Bears saying, oh, that should be good enough, and saying, no, this is going to be solved. This is going to be a priority. So I hope, no matter how they do it, that it's clear this was intentional and not just we're setting up a competition and may the best man win.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not one that I like Joe Thuney at left tackle. I mean, we've seen other teams try that when he was younger and still really good at offensive guard, and it didn't work out very well. Yeah, if it's a short-term quick fix in a game, or, you need one start out of them because, you got a couple guys injured, okay, fine. But this dude was just put up for best protector of the year, one of 5 or 6 guys, because he is that good of a left guard. I want my all-pro in his spot, playing his spot where we know he's going to be great. And he can help a Braxton Jones or a Theo Benedict or another, maybe a free agent that isn't quite one of the better ones, but somebody you feels serviceable until Trapilo gets back, if you believe that's the guy. So I like Joe Thuney just staying where he is. I think the other discussion I think that would happen before that is, do we start to look at Darnell Wright switching sides? Now, again, I'm against that. Darnell Wright's a great right tackle. We saw in Detroit with Ben Johnson, they had Penei Sewell. Now, of course, they had Taylor Decker, so it helped. But, you get that dominant right tackle, that dominant side where you can run behind. I think you keep that together with him and Jonah Jackson, and you just build off that, and you figure it out. Because, again, I'm going to say it one more time. This was a really good offensive line this year with the 4 guys in a turnstile at left tackle with 3 different guys that they were playing. Benedict could really good in the run game, couldn't block me as a pass rusher. Trapillo was kind of a mixed bag in there. And then Braxton Jones just got hurt pretty much immediately. And, so it'll be interesting to see how they value that spot going into this free agency and draft season.
All right, let's take our next break here. Let's go through our biggest draft needs that we have for the Chicago Bears as we get to the 2026 draft. We'll get to that next here on the Bears Squad Show. This episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your posts to the people who are the best match for your role and that make a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring. Do it the right way with Indeed. Adam, I'll let you start with this one. You kind of teased it a little bit, but when you look at the Bears and we go into the draft, what are the biggest needs you think for this team? I mean, it crosses over with free agency, obviously, as well, but like in the draft, like what are you either crossing your fingers the Bears take in any of the rounds here? Like what are your hopes for the 2026 draft? You're muted.
There we go. Sorry. I look at three positions. Edge rusher, I think to me is clear number one. Now, do they take that in the first round? I don't know yet. Number two is just the one technique, nose tackle, run stuffing, defensive tackle. And then number three is safety, because you have both open. Now we'll figure out a little bit if they bring back Byard and not Brisker. Do they bring back both? Then that pushes it down the list. How do they handle the safety situation? And then I think you got to look at the one I don't want to say is linebacker, because I think you can figure that out. So I put cornerback at 4 because we just don't know that other side. Is Nahshon Wright coming back? Is Tyreek Stevenson a guy that Dennis Allen thinks can ascend still? Or do they need that other guy opposite Jalen Johnson? So I put those 4, and it's all defense. It's going to continue to be all defense for me in that top 4. And then linebacker, I feel like you can find a guy in the 4th or 5th round, and as long as it's not a guy you reach for that's an undrafted, type guy from whatever his name was last year. And then, so I look at those 4 positions from the defense are top of my mind right now.
Yeah, priority number 1 is don't make a pick based on trying to fool the truck for not having highlights for him. Like that's a
you
trick.
Want to do it in the 7th round, fine, not in the 4th.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Especially when you mentioned cornerback there, like to me, we saw this year, you cannot have too many of those guys. Like first round, second round, it doesn't matter to me. If there's a good one on the board there, take them. I mean, in general, you can never have too many, and especially this season when all of them were injured, and no matter how many you kept adding, you always needed to have one more there. For sure that pass rusher is number 1 priority. I am curious because right before Shamar Turner got hurt, Dennis Allen was like, oh, we're making him a defensive end now. And I was like, so is that – they tried him as an edge rusher for like a couple of games, then the season was over, and it's like, well, what is his future? Is he an interior player or an exterior player? That's either way, it's not going to stop me from drafting an edge rusher if he is an exterior player, or drafting a tackle if he's a tackle. But like, I wonder if it does influence them, because when Ryan Poles was asked specifically about, hey, the pass rush, how do you evaluate that this season? He's like, well, we had a lot of injuries at that spot, but we're excited about those guys. I'm like, that's not, I mean, he's like, yeah, we always want to add at that position, but like injuries really took us. And I think if that group was fully healthy, it's still not nearly good enough there. So I hope that wasn't him kind of saying, hey, this doesn't have to be nearly as big of a priority for them, because I draft an edge rusher and a tackle. Like those are going to be pretty much my two premium spots there. And I think you're smart at safety there too, because even if you re-sign Kevin Byard, like he's 32, I think 32 will turn 32 in August. So like, give me his long-term replacement in the draft this year. That guy that doesn't have to be a first, second round pick that you're expecting to start right away, but someone who, as soon as 2027 or 2028 at the latest, will have a spot to start in this defense and can be that sort of heir apparent that's learning and developing and being more specifically what Dennis Allen might look for at safety. But like, there's a clear, obvious, we haven't really mentioned any key positions on offense at all as needs here. And I think that's something that's worth pointing out. Right? It's unspoken right now, but like in the draft, like, sure, take a running back, take some off, maybe a guard in terms of like a long-term Joe Tooney replacement. You got Luke Newman, but I like Luke Newman, but I'm not counting on a 6th round pick for sure becoming a starting caliber player. But like, 3rd, 4th round type of guy, maybe the 5th round even. Like, sure, I'd add another player on the interior, but like, don't need to make wide receiver a priority. Certainly don't need to make tight end a priority. So like running back and maybe offensive line depth feels about it on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I feel like even if they traded DJ Moore this offseason, which we'll kind of start to talk about at some point too, is like if you even make that move, like whatever you're getting in return, like yet fills probably one of these needs that we're talking about in the draft. Like I'm personally hoping like if they did make a DJ Moore trade, it's not for just straight draft pick compensation. I'm hoping that there's a player coming in to fill a gap on this defense immediately. So like, I guess it could open up like the wide receiver conversation, but like it just doesn't feel like a priority at this point. Like I know it's 1 year of Ben Johnson, but I kind of just want to give Ben Johnson the benefit of the doubt that like if he goes and signs a veteran, like for a cheap veteran in free agency to be that 3rd wide receiver next to Burden and Dunze, if DJ Moore is not here, that like, they'll be fine. And like running back's an interesting one that you bring up, Lauren. Like Swift is going to be a big topic of conversation, I think, this offseason too, because he exceeded all of our expectations by far this year. But, Ben Johnson did move on from him after a year. He was part of that process in Detroit. So I would be a little shocked if they took a running back, unless it was like in the same like Monungai, like 6th, 7th round territory. But yeah, I think offense is just, Adam, the farthest thing from my mind in this entire draft process.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on Moore and Swift. I mean, if you see Swift cut to save that whatever 6-7 million you can save by cutting him, then yeah, maybe you look in the draft for a guy that fits his same kind of style. That guy that fits more the Jahmyr Gibbs style role, while you have Kyle Monungai, who showed that he can carry the load and be that 1st, 2nd down back. I think that now you look for that specific type guy, and there are a few in this draft that if Swift is gone, maybe you pull the trigger in the 2nd round, or maybe you trade down a little bit in the 1st round and pick up an extra 3rd, and you're looking for the guy there. So there's different things you can do, and like you said early, free agency and the trade market will change these needs as I see. The one need I see staying the same that I don't think you trade or sign for is that run stuffing defensive tackle, and there's a lot of them in this draft, especially in these early couple rounds. So I think that's where we'll see a lot of focus start to head to. We've already seen some mock drafts have those big guys being drafted by the Bears because the edge rush class is very top heavy. And then they're better probably in the late 2nd and into the 3rd round range. There's not that middle guy really, unless, there's a couple guys like TJ Parker from Clemson, depending on how they feel about them and what Dennis Allen likes. But I really look at that one technique nose tackle type guy. That's the guy I think the Bears really start to focus on in the 1st round at pick 25 if they stay there.
And I think it's worth also reflecting on like last year's draft, the 1st draft with Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen. Not to say that they're going to do the exact same approach, but like they were pretty clearly just taking best player available regardless of position for those first couple of picks. Like we did not go in that draft saying, got to get a tight end in round 1, but like they found a guy they loved and said, hey, we're going to take him, even though it's not a quote unquote draft need. And same thing with Luther Burden in the 2nd round, like wide receiver was not a top draft need. And a lot of people were mad of like, they're not taking a left tackle and they're not taking a pass rusher. What are they doing? Why are they taking these guys? So like, I do think like, especially at 25, maybe they started drafting for need once you got to Ozzie Trapillo and Shamar Turner and in the 2nd round. But and so, with that 2nd round pick at 57, that might be more of like a need type of thing. But I think at 25, they could take anything but a quarterback, and I wouldn't, and maybe probably not a guard.
Right.
Center. Like, there's very few positions that would stun me with that 25th overall pick. I guess if they don't trade DJ Moore, then wide receiver would be a stun, tight end would be a stun, quarterback would be obviously not even on the table, and then guard/center probably not on the table, but like anything else wouldn't floor me at all.
Yeah, I look at that for sure. I even still could see a wide receiver with the uncertainty of DJ Moore, even if he's still on the roster, because then and we're saying someone falls, like, Jordan Tyson, or, one of these guys falls that are being projected right now as top 15 picks. They fall to 25, and Ben Johnson's like, damn, I didn't think he was going to be there. Like, I could do a lot with him, plus Burden, plus Loveland, plus Roma Dunze. Like, now Caleb has weapons for days, and that's something you could see. And yeah, that definitely wouldn't shock me, even at wide receiver. Now, tight end would shock me. Guard, center would shock me. Other than that, running back, because I think Jeremiah Love will be gone, but and there's no other running backs, in my opinion, that are first-round picks. But so, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked at all by one of those guys, or best player available.
And we can't rule out the possibility of a DJ Moore draft day trade. Like, I think a lot of times we think, well, they'll do that right away at the start of free agency or whatever, so that, whatever, it just sets the direction of the offseason. But like, you could see a team that is picking in the first round and they want a wide receiver, and the guy they wanted doesn't get to them, and they go, all right, Ryan Poles, like, let's give you some players. That could be the impetus to say, now we'll pull the trigger on that deal that they had maybe already been talking about on the side, but just hadn't quite gotten to that point. So,
right.
You could see a scenario where, for whatever reason, DJ Moore gets traded, and then all of a sudden a wide receiver's there at 25, and that changes changes your draft needs in the moment on draft day. So we've seen crazier things happen with this Bears team, but we can't put anything past them.
That's true. That's for sure. I was thinking about, like, as you're talking about running backs there, Adam, and I work with Lance Zierlein from NFL.com, and he's been just going off about Jadarian Price as, like, he's like the clear number 2 running back, and he actually he hasn't said he likes him more than Jeremiah Love, because Jeremiah Love's clearly the number 1 running back, but like, he's quickly falling in love with Jadarian Price. I would still be surprised if they took a running back at 25. But Ben Johnson's like first move was like, that Lions offseason, like, they signed David Montgomery, and then they went and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. So, and it's like, now their roster is a little different, Lauren, than the Bears roster right now. But like, maybe it is on the table.
It'd be wild if both Notre Dame running backs go in the first round, and like, that's it. That would feel unprecedented. Have we ever had at the running back position, a starting back, and both go like first round? We had them go like early-ish, but like,
yeah.
The only one that pops in my mind is Reggie Bush, Lendell White. I can't remember when Lendell White was drafted.
I don't think he went in the first.
I want to say it was second round. That's what
I
want to say off the top of my head. That's the first duo that popped in. Were both drafted high.
Yeah, I think Lendell went in the second round. Second round. Yeah. I think it would be that'd be a first. Because I was thinking about, like, was it who shared the backfield with Darren McFadden back in the day at Arkansas? They both were pretty.
That might be the duo that did it. Was Felix Jones the Cowboys' first round pick that year?
It might have been, like, because like he might have been a second round pick too, but like Felix Jones and Darren McFadden. But like,
no, he was 22nd. I was thinking about in that early 20s, and McFadden was what, 5'6" to the Raiders.
That'd be crazy if that happened. I would be floored. But like, I don't know, maybe like anything's on the table for the Bears at this point. And I think the thing you guys were talking about with need, like, versus best player available, I do feel like last year's is a hint, and I guess we'll really get a good sample size this year in that second draft, but it does feel like this is just the best player available kind of process now with where your roster's at. Like, you're not really drafting for need at the top. The one question I have for you guys left on this before we look at some mock drafts is, we're now a year away from next year when the season ends and we start these squad shows for the offseason. The number 1 topic is going to be Caleb Williams' contract. He'll be eligible for the 5th-year extension or just for a, $60 million contract at that point. And I think we're going to talk about that on Tuesday a little bit more. But like, Lauren, do you start to think about that now as like maybe the Bears need to be trading back to start, be adding more capital so that when it's time to pay Caleb and Rome and all these guys that like you have extra, cheap players on your roster? Is that a factor you're already thinking about?
I don't think so, only because like I'm much more concerned about Ryan Poles giving big money to the wrong people that creates that problem, right? That the Dio Odengbo and Grady Jarrett questions are more of an obstacle there than like, oh, Caleb's big contract is going to keep them from adding other good players. It's like, oh, they're keeping themselves from adding other good players with bad moves there. So no, I don't think like that many. I'm not like extra eager to trade down because of that. Like certainly you always like to add draft picks when you can, but I think there's something to be said about the first round being able to produce a more premium player than you're going to be able to get later on. Like, sure, yeah, you trade down 5 or so spots or whatever. That's not going to be a big difference. But I think it's so easy to use the mock draft machines, right? And fall in love with, we'll trade back in the second round and get all these picks. And pull back in, and the quality of player you're getting, it might go down, 5% each time, but you do that 3 or 4 times, all of a sudden you're just not getting players with the same kind of special high ceiling, right? You're not getting the Colston Loveland and Luther Burden players that you're like, holy crap, that's a difference maker. Not just like good player, but like next level playmaker, difference maker type guy. Like Trapillo in the second round, good player, but we're not looking at him going like, wow, what a game changing left tackle. But he could be a solid starter for your career. Like you drop off from that between those two calibers of players, the more aggressively you try and trade down and add picks. But like you get a bunch of B grade players on your team, but you only have a few opportunities to get those like A plus swing for the fences type of guys. So I like to hold on to those as much as I can.
Yeah, I'm 100% with that. I don't like the trade down in the first round just to pick up. Now, if you're trading, in the second or third round, and maybe you trade down 6 spots and pick up an extra 5th or 4th, whatever teams are willing to offer. I mean, the thing I like more so, and it all depends on the draft. It's you're looking at, okay, how deep is this draft? Like last year wasn't a very deep draft. So I would prefer, I'm going to trade down and I'm trying to get picks for the next year to then start adding that in terms of, okay, now I got extra draft capital next year where I think it's going to be a better draft. Therefore, if I see a player I like, now I got an extra 4th rounder that I can put in that trade while still keeping my 4th rounder, or, vice versa, whatever it is, that you can go get players you want. And that's something that we haven't really seen Ryan Poles do much of in his tenure, but he's also been trying to build this up with the best players he can get, in that year. So I understand the way he's done it. Now, as they get better, that's the kind of process I want to see. Unless you're going for a specific player that is falling, that you're like, we got this guy 8th and he's at 21 still available. Okay, now I'm okay moving up and getting your guy. Now you better be right, because you're going to give up something of good consequence. But yeah, it's a year to year is such a difference, because you don't know how good each draft is until you really dive into it. And, I haven't dove into it a lot. I think a lot of guys are still trying to figure out how deep this draft really, really is.
Yeah, I want to do and what's nice for Bears fans is like that want to trade back. There's a really good point of reference from last year, because the Houston Texans traded the 25th pick last year to the New York Giants so the Giants could take Jackson Dart. What they got in return was the 34th overall pick in the second round, the 99th overall pick in the third round, and a 2026 third round pick. So like you only move back a couple spots and you get 2 third rounders, and it helps the Giants, stunk again this year. So that's a top 5 third round pick. But like, is that worth moving off a player you really like? I would assume that means you don't like a player.
Who's
there, right?
available? Who's available at that spot?
It is funny because it feels like in my mind, I'm like, I could totally see a scenario where like that exact Texans scenario is playing out for the Bears this year, where like Ty Simpson is sitting there at 25 and someone's like, oh, we're going to trade back in and, get that 5th year option. So at least there's something comparable that I think Bears fans can look at. All right, let's take a look at Daniel Jeremiah from NFL.com and Mel Kiper from ESPN, their first mock drafts where they have the Bears going, our reaction to it, because there's a position that I don't think was mentioned in the first round by any of us here. Maybe it was, but we'll talk about that next here on the Bears Squad Show.
This episode of the Bears Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. So whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or just building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. It's where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the offseason and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. It's the last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
All right, guys, let's take a look at these mock drafts here. Yeah, I can't remember if anyone mentioned taking a safety in the first round or not, but that's where Mel Kiper has the Chicago Bears going in his mock draft. With the 25th pick, he has the Bears taking safety Dylan Theinman from Oregon. I've seen the Penn State safety. I'm sorry, this is Daniel Jeremiah has the safety being taken.
I was just going to say switch.
Yeah. I flipped them. I've seen the Penn State safety be mocked in other ones, which is an interesting note. If you want to impress your friends, there's never been a Penn State safety or defensive back taken in the first round of the NFL draft ever. So the Bears could make history there if they did that this year. But look, from a positional value, safety is one that's very debatable amongst fans, like within free agency value, draft value. So like, Lauren, when you just hear like, oh, the Bears take a safety in the first round, what would your overall reaction be, not knowing a ton about the player yet so far?
Sure. Yeah. I think the interesting thing there is that safety is such a clear and obvious hole and need right now that what first jumps to my mind is, so you're going into the draft not having one of your starting safety set. Like, are we really going to get to draft day with just a glaring hole that you got to use that first round pick because you got Kevin, you got I can't think of Kevin Byard. Christ, I was losing the name. You got Kevin Byard and then backups. Like, you just go like, so that's the tricky thing about like drafting a safety that early is presumably they will go into the draft already with some kind of answer at safety at both safety spots. They'll have some kind of person that we could presume is either the starter or will quote unquote compete to start. So then all of a sudden it doesn't become priority number one that, oh, you got to use a first round pick on a safety. And depending on who and what you invest in that other safety spot, there might not be a lot of playing time for a first round safety. Like if you get, certainly if you re-sign Byard and Brisker, but even if you do Byard and then, you sign some veteran to a 1-year deal, like I get like they can compete and stuff, but like, are you going to risk that player sitting on the bench? Like if you told a free agent, hey, come here and start for a season, then you're going to use a first round pick on a guy that sure can rotate in and be that third safety and die. Like you can find little ways to use them, but I just don't like the idea of like, if you've already invested in that position, getting a first round pick on a guy that just isn't going to have a big window to playing time. It's not like a pass rusher or another spot where even if they're a backup, you can rotate them in frequently and still get them out there. It's like safety is a little bit of a all or nothing position right now in Dennis Allen's defense, that you're not just going to cycle between two guys all year round. So I kind of hope they go into the draft not feeling like you got to use an early draft pick on that spot because you just haven't addressed it in any other way.
Yeah, I'm completely with Lauren here in the way he just spoke about that. And on top of it, for me, I don't like taking safeties in the first round, just like I'm 100% against taking running backs in the first round. I've always been that guy. Now, if even if you got a chance at like a Saquon or something like that, I just find it hard for the value wise, but safety is definitely that guy on defense. I think you can find guys in the second or third and even fourth round that you can trust. If, a guy goes down, that he can step right in and at least be a playmaker. And we've seen some guys, Amanawari from the Seahawks is a perfect example. He was drafted early second round, but he's a difference maker on that defense. But they also have a very, very good front seven that Mike McDonald uses in different ways to get after the quarterback. So that helps. So if you're taking a safety round one and you didn't just go crazy in free agency and get Trey Hendrickson and another defensive tackle and now your front seven set, I think taking a safety in the first round would be a big disappointment in my eyes. Even though I do like Thieneman quite a bit out of Oregon. I would love him at the second round pick if he's still there. But first round, I don't like that value of just the position alone.
it does feel like, to bring it back to our previous conversation, like, is a safety going to be the best player available on the draft board at the end of the first round? Maybe, but like,
I don't
you know,
think so.
like, I understand, like, you could talk me into Caleb Downs from Ohio State, not obviously not going to be the 25, but like him being a best player available on a draft board earlier in the first round. But like, once you get past the like, wow, that guy looks like he's special, like that's a total game changer type of safety, then it's like, well, best player available is a first round pick. Like, give me the guy who I think can be that A plus guy. Whereas, like, I think a lot of, once you get past the Downses of the world, it's a lot of like Ozzie Trapillo caliber, like good player, not like difference maker who's going to change my defense. And I like the idea of first round picks being those kind of guys that can be true difference makers in whatever way that their position allows them to.
And I think one thing with Downs is, or a guy like Downs, he's so good that he can play the slot. You could put him outside if you need to in a pinch, whereas Thieneman's more of just a true safety. He's a guy that can play deep. He can play in the box. He's a good safety, but you're not going to trust him playing that nickel spot if you need him to. Whereas guys like Caleb Downs, you can put him anywhere back there, and you're like, okay. You can even walk him up into the box and be like, hey, I need you to play linebacker for 2 drives while this guy gets him out. That's how good Caleb Downs is. So I think his versatility of what makes him so good compared to like Dylan Thieneman.
I know you hate drafting safeties, but like, if Downs fell for a little bit for him and they traded up for him, would you be mad?
No, because of that versatility he brings, especially with Kyler Gordon's injury history. And even if you brought back Brisker and Byard and Downs falls to you or gets to 22, 23, and you're like, yeah, we'll give up a 3rd round pick to go get him. Yeah, I'm good with that because he's so versatile and he's so good at all the spots, not just at safety.
We'll save Mel Kiper for next week. We got a long off season. One thing you said, Lauren, that
I think I will say this though: Mel Kiper's pick, Caden McDonald, would be best case scenario in my opinion as we sit right now.
For sure, and we'll hit that more because I agree with you. We'll hit that more next week. But one thing you said, Lauren, that like I think is really important too for the Bears is like how much they play immediately. Like you're in a position like you need guys right away, and the safety position is funny too because something also that in that, really that first year of Ben Johnson taking over as the OC for Lions, they drafted Brian Branch, the Lions did. So like running, like it's hard. You can't look at too much history, but like at the same time, like they did take Colson Loveland in the first round and the Lions took Sam Laporta right away. So like they identified their needs and they went out and aggressively got them. But like that's my, like the 25th is so weird. Like this is what Bears fans, we have to like reset our expectations for the draft because we're so used to the Bears picking in the top 10 for the last how many years now? 5, 6 years, whatever it's been, 7 years, maybe even. That like you like now at 25, it's a totally different ball game for what the Bears be looking at. But I'm looking for a player that's going to play and bringing in someone either because you didn't address the safety position like you laid out, Lauren, or someone that's going to be fighting for a spot. Just feels like where this team's at would feel like a total waste.
Yeah, it reminds me of a little bit of last year's first round conversation before Loveland became a possibility. With like the debate between Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart as pass rushers, where one is the guy who had 3 career sacks, but all the tools you could possibly want. And you could drool and think, oh man, you can make this guy into a total dominating player. Or Michael Williams, who has the production but a little limited in the physical tools, like high floor, low ceiling versus high ceiling, low floor conversation. And it does feel like, well, you still take the best player available. If one's clearly better than the other, just take the one that you think is the better player. But if all else is equal, I think the Bears are more in a high floor type of player. Like they don't, especially this late in the first round, it's like, give me the guy that can help impact this team quite a bit, even right away, but across his rookie contract, as opposed to like taking a lottery pick on a swing for the fences for a guy that might not be any good in year 1, but eventually 2 or 3 years down the line can start to get there. Like assuming all else is equal, I think this is the Bears are in a position now for going for more of those higher floor players as opposed to before. It felt like you might as well swing for the fences because you're still a couple of years away from contending.
Well, and that's where I look at, the list I said earlier of draft needs. I have edge rusher at number 1, but you have Montez Sweat. You have Dio Adangbo, who's going to come back from injury. You have Austin Booker kind of set as your top 3. And I don't see a guy at 25 coming in unless, again, someone falls that, if you take a TJ Parker or a Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, those guys are probably situational pass rushers. Whereas if you get a guy like Mel Kiper took in Caden McDonald or Caleb Banks, the big defensive tackles that eat up space, but can also help get after the passer. I think that's a guy that comes in. Either of those guys come in and start day one, and maybe you go, because Andrew Billings, he fell off this year. I mean, we watched it. He was not very good. I'd actually be surprised if they bring him back. And then his backup is Chris Williams. You have Dexter and Grady Jarrett at the 3 technique, which fine, you got some depth there. And you have Turner who can kind of do both, which is like you talked about earlier. That's the unknown. What is Turner? If he's a defensive end, now you have another second rounder that's with those 3 I just mentioned. Are you going to take a pass rusher at 25, or are you going to look at a guy like Caden McDonald and say, we can plug him next to Jarrett or Dexter, and he's going to eat up blocks and he's going to eat up running backs in the middle of that line? That's where you get that I'm coming in, I'm playing right away type guy.
And Shamar Turner's in some of, I mean, not quite the same, but this Ozzie Trapillo conversation of like, he tore his ACL in mid-season, whatever, week 8, week 9, whatever it was. Like, that's not to say that he's going to miss half of next year, but like, he's going to miss OTAs at a minimum, OTAs and mandatory minicamp. He may or may not be ready for training camp. Like, I don't know that I'm counting on him taking a big step forward and playing a big role.
Right.
Next year, beyond that, sure, this year is in 2026. So like, I find myself feeling kind of like Trapillo, where it's like, this doesn't necessarily totally impact my draft plans. I sort of pretend like he's not there. And certainly on the defensive line, even if he was there, give me more. Like, invest more in that position, because especially the edge rusher, Ryan Poles has just not put draft capital in. Second round picks in Turner and Dexter, like there's an investment there, but like 5th round picks in Booker and Dominic Robinson ain't cutting it out on the outside.
Totally agree. It's been, look, we know, like, it's the number one. I think it's the number one topic this offseason is how are the Bears going to add a pass rusher? And it's draft, trades, free agency. Like, Lauren, I can't imagine. Like, I feel like that's going to be a lot of what you're going to be talking about on Locked On Bears this season.
It's the number one topic of the last 4 off seasons. Somebody's going to talk about Yannick Ngakoue again at some point here, like the annual tradition.
Remember, like the first 3 weeks we came on here, and the first thing I said was, "Where's the pass rush?" And it's gonna, hopefully we're not saying that again, because it's just Montez Sweat and Dio Adangbo out there at the defense. There's got to be at least, I don't care if it's a veteran that all he does is just get after the quarterback. You got to get somebody. Austin Booker's kind of that guy, but he didn't take the step after the injury and everything that I think everybody hoped. So you got to do something. You have to get a true pass rusher.
37-year-old Von Miller, come on down.
Oh man, that Lord, don't put that bad juju on us right now. He was terrible last year.
Something that's going to be talked about, the guy that's going to be talked about is Trey Hendrickson. But he's 31, 32. Mm-hmm. Do you want that old where you're going to give him probably over $100 million? You want to do that to that guy? I don't know. Or do they even have the money to do that without hurting them in other situations? So much to talk about with this offseason.
Yes, and we got a lot to talk about. We'll be here on the Bear Squad shows twice a week, Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Fridays at 10 a.m. We'll be here throughout the entire offseason doing shows, talking Bears, talking draft. Free agency opens up. It's right around the corner. I mean, it is essentially February, and free agency opens up in March. So we are not far from even Bears big news coming down the way. That will do it for this episode of the Bear Squad Show. Thank you for listening and watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave us a like or review, and make sure you check out Lauren every day on the Locked On Bears podcast as well. We will talk to you on Tuesday. Peace.